Newton's laws of motion and gravity. Did anyone see anything move faster than a galloping horse in his day? Probably not. And so the Newton's laws of motion and gravity worked. They worked not only for galloping horses, it worked for the moon in orbit around the Earth, and the Earth in orbit around the sun, and Jupiter's moons in orbit around Jupiter, and for the planets. But wait a minute, it doesn't work for Mercury. Einstein comes along and says, I have a new understanding of gravity and a new understanding of motion. And it accounts for this weirdness in Mercury's orbit. Its shape could only be accounted for when you throw in Einstein's theory of general relativity. Why? Because the sun's gravity is so monstrous and Mercury's orbiting close enough to it that it's being influenced by extra phenomenon going on in the universe that's the product of very high and significant gravity. So then do we throw Newton out the window? No, actually. Newton's laws don't stop working, but when you start going fast enough, you cannot use Newton's laws. You have to use a deeper understanding.